Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you 10 different media and substrate combos to see what could work for printmaking. So before we can start experimenting with printing, we obviously need a block to print. I'll include other videos in my channel of the step-by-step if you're not familiar with how to make a print block. In this case I'm using a 4x6 Speedball rubber block to start printing. So grab your rubber, linoleum, or wood block print and let's see what works. So I recognize this might be sacrilegious to you veteran printmakers out there, but if you come from the painting world like I do, you might be curious as to whether something like Posca paint pens can work for lifting a print. I used it in a back and forth motion here and a Speedball baren to try and see if I could lift a print using paint. So I actually think it came out pretty cool with pretty good details, but you have to work quickly because Posca pens dry fast. So for my next experiment, I tried to take it to the limit of what Posca pens could do for printmaking by seeing if I could work quickly enough to incorporate multiple colors for a print. I was also curious how these light and bright colors might show up against a dark background, so I'm testing these paint combinations against Van Gogh black watercolor postcards to see if this will lift the paint enough to be a really cool print. And again, you can see here that I'm using a Speedball baren to apply pressure, but if you don't have one, you can use the back of a wooden spoon just to get that even pressure before you lift. So while I love this light-dark contrast, I don't think this technique was great. The paint bled in some areas, smudged a little bit, and dried too quickly in others. So for experiment 3, I wanted to see maybe it was just the paper. That black watercolor paper wasn't working well. So I did the same Posca pen's multiple color technique and used a more traditional printmaking paper. In this case, I'm using the Bristol Smooth Finish 300 series to see if this lifts a better print. So overall, I do think that this more traditional printmaking paper works better than the watercolor paper, but again, you have to work very quickly. You can see here my first color, this yellow, seemed to dry before the rest. For my last paint pens experiment, I was wondering if I could get a ghost print without reapplying more paint. And unfortunately the answer is definitely not, because it dries so quickly, almost nothing lifted. So at this point I figured it was time to start using more traditional printmaking materials like oil-based inks, particularly made for printmaking. And as you can see from my kind of life hack here, I'm using the top of an acrylic picture frame instead of a traditional inking plate. I think as long as you use the brayer to make the ink very thin and evenly spread, this can work. I'm using this oil-based ink in the same Bristol cardstock paper that I used earlier, and I like to press it down slightly in the middle when pressing this print to avoid smudging. And as one might expect when using more traditional printmaking paper and ink, this lift came up much clearer than the Posca pens. I was curious with its oil-based ink, without applying more, if I could get a ghost print using a thinner paper, in this case origami paper. So I was very pleasantly surprised. I think the thinness of this paper really made the details come out when coupled with the oil-based ink. The results of the ghost print really inspired me to go to town with some of these different backgrounds of origami paper, seeing how this red oil-based ink would show up. From there, I switched to a white oil-based ink to see how this light-dark contrast might show up on the darker origami paper, and clearly this was a favorite because I made quite a few of them. I also wanted to go back to trying watercolor paper, but this time with oil-based ink, and I think this turned out a little bit clearer. Lastly, I went back to the black watercolor paper to see if I could get a ghost print using the white oil-based inks, and while it didn't bleed like the Posca pens did, it also wasn't the perfect print either. All said and done, I think I ended up liking the white oil-based ink on the colorful origami paper background the best. So yes, for the printmaking purists, there is a right way to do printmaking, but I hope you had fun experimenting with different media and substrates to see what that right combination is for you in printmaking. So please let me know in the comments, which of these experiments was your favorite, and do you have another method of printmaking that you found to work? Please like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you next time.